When Disney bought Star Wars, it changed. We got nostalgia, lightsabers, and a whole lot of space wizards. But we also got the political depth of a soggy napkin, despite George Lucas literally saying repeatedly that Star Wars is political. The Empire are practically space Nazis, and the rebels are literal insurgents. Disney's new trilogy, however, seemed more concerned with merchandise than messaging. Enter Andor, a show where Jedi are nowhere to be seen, and hope doesn't come in the form of destiny or magical bloodlines, but in radical action, sacrifice, and revolution. In short, Andor makes Star Wars political again. Not the Senate chamber debates kind of political, the holy shit, this is about real people fighting a fascist state kind of political. And to those of you who subscribe to the theory that Luthen was a Jedi, you are missing the entire point of Andor. The point that it's real people on the ground surface who spark rebellion, not ancient power. And its messaging is clear. Saul's rambling,
"You're here! You're not with Luthen, you're here! You're right here, and you're ready to fight!"
Luthen's monologue,
I burn my decency for someone else's future. I burn my life to make a sunrise that I know I'll never see.
Nemik's manifesto.
Remember this. Freedom is a pure idea.
Andor isn't just good TV. It's a raised fist framed inside the galaxy far, far away that we all fell in love with. Let's get one thing straight. George Lucas didn't hide the politics in Star Wars. Many people just chose to ignore it. The original trilogy was a Vietnam War allegory with fascist aesthetics, and the prequels were a not-so-subtle warning about how democracies die, with thunderous applause and legally elected dictators. Yes, George was making space wizard movies for children, but also radical anti-imperialist allegories. The man had range. Then the Disney era arrived, and the message got corporatized. Instead of rebellion, we got resistance, TM. Instead of oppression, we got vague first-order bad guys who, despite dressing like Nazis and blowing up planets, still somehow managed to feel less threatening than your corporate HR department. It's all very safe, market-tested storytelling. Which brings us to Andor, a show that instead asks, what if we actually treated the Empire like a fascist regime, and the people fighting it like real humans with real stakes? Andor strips Star Wars away from its mysticism, and what we're left with is raw, unfiltered rebellion. There's no Jedi mind tricks, no chosen ones, no prophecies or ancient bloodlines, just people, scared people, angry people, people with nothing left to lose. Okay, there is a little bit of destiny sprinkled in there with the Force healer, but it's done tastefully as not to distract from the real message of Andor. Cassian Andor isn't an ideologically pure character. He's a thief, a migrant, a survivor. He doesn't want to be a hero. He wants to live. But when living under fascism becomes unbearable, survival turns into resistance. That's the beating heart of Andor. Not heroism, but desperation. Not destiny, but choice. And the show is full of supporting cast hammering in that philosophy. Bix, a tortured civilian. Kino Loy, the prison foreman turned revolutionary. Mon Mothma, caught between aristocracy and revolution. And of course, Luthen Rael, the high-functioning, morally questionable leader who knows that revolutions eat their own. These aren't heroes. They're not even always likable, but they're real. They're the nobodies, the ones that history forgets. Andor points towards these refreshing names instead of just repeating Skywalker. Okay, so we can't do a political Andor video without talking about one of the darkest moments in Andor, and in the broader rebellion lore, the Ghorman Massacre. In Legends canon, it's the moment where Imperial forces brutally trample peaceful protesters. It's also the moment Mon Mothma breaks with the Senate and fully commits to rebellion. Andor changes what happened slightly versus Legend, but the tone rings through the same, high-pitched and hard-hitting, because we've seen it before. We've seen it in Nazi-occupied France, where the French resistance was labelled as terrorists and executed without trial, where collaborators drank wine while partisans were rounded up in the streets. We've seen it in Gaza, where civilians in their homes are fired upon with live rounds, where existence is criminalised and entire neighbourhoods are demolished in the name of security. We've seen it in Algeria in the 50s and 60s, where the French Empire used torture, surveillance and systemic brutality to crush rebellion, where revolutionaries became monsters to fight monsters. Ghorman, like these, isn't just a plot device, it's a mirror. And Andor holds it up unapologetically. This isn't a both sides show. The Empire is fascist, full stop. It's not a metaphor, it's a reality, albeit one with shinier boots and cooler uniforms. Okay, let's pause and pour one out for one of the most cold-blooded revolutionaries in all of Star Wars, Luthen Rael. Played with convincing menace by Stellan Skarsgård, Luthen isn't here to moralize, he is just here to win. In a monologue that honestly deserves an Emmy, Luthen says,
I wake up every day to an equation I wrote 15 years ago from which there's only one conclusion. I'm damned for what I do.
That's not Disney-fied rebellion. That's Frantz Fanon in space. That's every revolutionary who knew they were damned but chose to fight anyway. And that's where Andor really swings its political saber. It's not interested in clean revolutions. It knows that insurgency is messy, that you can't always be a good person and a good revolutionary, that the Empire doesn't fall with good intentions, it falls with sabotage, with lies, with sacrifices that stain your soul. It's not glorifying this, it's just telling the truth. Another thing I seriously appreciate about this show is how Andor digs into the Empire's real power, not just its guns and stormtroopers, but its bureaucracy, the surveillance state, the prisons, the corporate boot on the neck of every Outer Rim worker trying to make ends meet. The ISB is basically the Gestapo in white. Cyril Khan is every incel cop with a fascist fetish and mummy issues, while also highlighting how people who view themselves as good can be bred into corrupt institutions. And the prison arc? That's not just a subplot, that's practically a thesis statement. It's about labor exploitation, about systems that feed themselves with quotas, about dehumanization so efficient it doesn't even need guards with guns, just a floor that kills and a system that breaks you. It's also, ironically, where the most hope emerges, because even inside this perfectly calibrated nightmare, revolution breaks through, because
One way out
isn't just a chant, it's a refusal to die quietly. And here's the thing about Andor. It never pretends the Empire is redeemable. Sure, there's a few morally complex lower-ranked officers, but the leaders are unquestionably evil. There's no conflicted Kylo Ren, no tragic backstory for Palpatine, just brutal, efficient evil. There's a growing trend of moral complexity in TV, and I love the Walter Whites and Tony Sopranos of the world as much as the next guy, but this isn't the time, place, or galaxy for it. The Empire is not a metaphor for something. It is something. It's fascism. It's colonialism. It's authoritarianism dressed in bureaucracy. It's what happens when systems stop serving people and start serving power. And Andor makes that clear in every moment. From the way Empire agents talk about population control to the way they weaponize scarcity and fear. The message is clear. It's a war between the oppressed and the oppressor. So yes, Andor made Star Wars political again. But here's the truth. It always was. What Andor did was remind us that stories about rebellion should actually mean something. That stormtroopers aren't just cool-looking action figures. They're the boot of a fascist regime. That revolution isn't sexy. It's necessary. It's ugly. And it's real. In a time when corporations love to sell us rebellion while crushing unions, and politicians condemn resistance while arming oppression, Andor dares to say the quiet part out loud. Wrapped up and packaged into wonderfully written and perfectly executed television, it's a large dose of what we all needed.